This large jaw crusher malfunctioned during production. To repair it, they went to an open-air repair shop in Karachi, renowned for the stability and precision of its craftsmen's repair techniques. Let's see how they fixed the crusher. After inspection, the technician initially determined that there was an issue with the internal eccentric shaft. To repair it, the eccentric shaft had to be dismantled. Although the crusher's structure is relatively simple, disassembly is challenging due to its massive size. To smoothly remove the flywheel, the technician needed to use a jack to push out one side while continuously hammering the other side. With the cooperation of two technicians, the fixed flywheel gradually loosened. Then, they unscrewed the securing nuts, and the flywheel was removed. The exact process was applied to the belt pulley on the other side. With the technician's skilled operation, the flywheel and belt pulley were successfully dismantled in less than 30 minutes. Without the flywheel obstruction, the eccentric bearing was also smoothly removed. Next, the dust covers on both sides needed to be removed. It became evident that the technicians used straightforward tools. Even for such a massive repair job, no pneumatic wrench was used, and all bolts were unscrewed manually. They cleverly used an iron block to create a giant pendulum to remove the eccentric shaft, repeatedly hammering one side of the shaft. Finally, the technician successfully dismantled the stubborn eccentric shaft with mighty strength. However, upon seeing the eccentric shaft fall, it became clear that the situation was more complicated than expected. The massive eccentric shaft had broken into two pieces, significantly increasing the difficulty of the repair work. The technicians had to formulate a new repair plan. Before that, they needed to remove the bearings and inspect the inside of the eccentric shaft seat to check for damage. The inside of the seat was covered in grease, and simple wiping was insufficient. Therefore, the technician added some motor oil and burned it to clean the internal grease. Upon inspection, it was found that the inner wall of the shaft seat was severely worn. Typically, they would use welding and additive manufacturing to fill the worn areas. However, the crusher's high workload ruled out this method. After discussions, they decided on a more reliable method, enlarging the bore of the worn bearing seat and replacing it with a new eccentric shaft. The technicians demonstrated great adaptability, compensating for the lack of equipment with their skills. An old lathe was used to complete the boring of the bearing seat. For the eccentric shaft, they used a large steel rod. The steel rod was mounted on the lathe to ensure it was concentric and coaxial. The technician repeatedly measured with calipers, determined the center point, and fixed it with the tailstock center of the lathe. As the lathe started, the cutting tool left new marks on the steel rod. Due to the irregular distribution of the segments on the eccentric shaft, the technician had to mark the steel rod according to the old shaft specifications and gradually machine the new eccentric shaft. After careful machining, the rough shape of the eccentric shaft gradually emerged. The technician meticulously measured with a micrometer to ensure each segment size and length met the specifications. For any minor deviations, the technician finally ground them with a cutting tool. The bearing inner ring was repeatedly fitted and checked to ensure accuracy until the large eccentric shaft was completed. Next, the cleaned bearing was fitted onto the eccentric shaft for the final assembly. Assembling it was as challenging as disassembling it, requiring multiple technicians to work together, rhythmically hammering it into place. Finally, after the technicians were exhausted, the eccentric shaft was successfully positioned. They then applied sufficient grease, covered it with dust caps, and tightened the bolts. For the bearing assembly, the technicians first heated the inner ring of the bearing. Once heated, the bearing was easily fitted. Finally, a crane was used to reassemble the crusher onto the frame, completing the repair work on the jaw crusher. How would you rate this repair method?